Utah's best coverage of the Utes, Cougars, Jazz, and Mammoth. Here we go. From the guys who have been there for all the biggest moments in Utah sports history. You're listening to DJ and PK on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We're joined by Pete Sousa, host of Inside the Big 12 and the Pete Sousa Show. Pete, good morning.
David, Patrick, what's going on, fellas? How we doing?
Well, we're just dragging through the fall camp that happens in summer when it's 100 degrees here in Utah, and we can't wait to get to the games and be surprised by something, by anything. That's the beauty of sports. It's unscripted drama. You got any surprises you're leaning towards for all the talk we're getting about college football? You think people are overlooking somebody or some team?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I was taking a look at Big 12 quarterbacks this morning because I've never been in my life so close to the conference and the quarterback play, just like following it, talking to coaches, talking to players. And it is interesting when you see the way that we rank the Big 12 quarterbacks now, or like the experts rank them. Like I was looking at an article from On3 this morning, and that's a site and an outlet that I really trust. Those guys know ball. And, you know, if you look at their rankings, they have like DJ Lagway, Avery Johnson. They even have Bear Bachmeier ranked at 4 with Connor Wegman. Those guys are all like in the middle of the pack. And then at the top is Drew Mestamaker, Devin Dampier, guys who were not Noah Fafita, right? Guys who have been the sleepers are now the stars, and like the star quarterbacks are now the sleepers. So in a perfect world for the Big 12, right, you would see a guy like DJ Lagway, Avery Johnson, or even Juju Lewis at Colorado, like reach their potential, or at least somewhat. And then you've got like so many exciting quarterbacks. Personally, you guys out there in Salt Lake are actually talking to the right guy this morning. I have week 1, I have Thursday night at Utah. I'm calling that game for ESPN, so Idaho at Utah. And then we're going down the road to Provo for Saturday night for Utah Tech BYU. So I have both those games, and I've been digging into both those teams, and I'm so pumped to see Utah and Devin Dampier, like a healthy 100% Devin Dampier, and then also one more year of development from Bear Bachmeier after an explosive freshman campaign.
I keep reading and seeing that there was possibilities of Tech bringing in another quarterback. Is that sending an appropriate message that we don't really believe in you, Will, even though you're our guy?
Well, look, as far as that quarterback situation is concerned, I think that's just they're trying to – it's a CYA deal, right? Cover your you-know-what. I don't think they want to get caught with their pants down because last year, really one of the things that buoyed Texas Tech and their playoff hopes was when Baron Morton went down, Will Hammond was there, and he was able to hold the line and at times maybe even take Texas Tech above the line. So I think it's more for depth. I don't know that it is like, hey, Will Hammond, you're not playing well enough. Here's one thing I will say. They are very, how should I say, they're holding the steering wheel pretty tight at Tech about offensive production this year. They do not want to end up in another situation where they're in the college football playoff and their offense gets embarrassed. So I think there is a little bit of, hey, what can we do? What can we do? And in a universe of college football where, you know, we've got a guy who just spent training camp with the Browns who is more than likely going to be playing with LSU this year. Like the possibilities are endless. And we've seen, you know, Texas Tech, God bless them, they can play like the morality role, right? Like after everything kind of went by the wayside with Brendan Sorsby, the truth of the matter is they would probably do whatever they could to make their team better. In this climate, it's legal to do that too.
Do you think at quarterback you can bring somebody in and they don't know the offense, they don't know the guys? Does it work? I mean, if you brought in a running back or a cornerback, I totally believe it. But the later we get, doesn't it just seem impossible?
Yeah, and honestly, that's what makes Bear Bachmeier so unbelievable. You know, and, you know, that what we witnessed last year at BYU is like one of the more unique things you will ever come across. And that's because he is such a unique guy from such a unique family, really. I was watching something about his brother, Tiger, yesterday. And Tiger's like already graduated Stanford. Now he's at BYU. He's got his pilot license. He speaks like 7 different languages. Like, those guys are so smart. But the reason I bring, Bear up is because it is hard. And you can't really just do it. And so I think that's sort of a fool's errand, but I will say the idea for Tech, right, to bring in another quarterback, because this is what they were saying all along about Will Hammond and even Brendan Sorsby was like, look, if we can get somebody under center by November that is lathered up and we're ready to go, that's what we need to really punch through in the college football playoff. So I think that these coaches are aware of what you're saying, and it's like if we do bring on somebody later in the season, or somebody to start the season, it probably won't be later in the season till we expect to see them at their absolute best and totally in sync with the rest of the offense.
What did you make of Kalani Sitake being so vocal about their charge of doing more with less, and that they haven't given the program the promises that they made? It's kind of strange timing.
It's super weird. And, Kalani Sitake is such an amazing guy. And we have this body of work with him that shows us nothing but he's an amazing guy and that he's an amazing coach. So when he starts to get vocal like this, it definitely makes, people like me who are a little further away from the situation from, say, everybody day to day out there in Utah, it's a head scratcher for us. And then I talk to, guys like you and people around the program there who are really close to it. And they say that, there's some stuff going on between Kalani and Brian Santiago, and that situation has gotten pretty tense. And, Mark Hill comes on board, and is he the guy that's going to, take it over for Santiago? There's so much going on, right? Or would he potentially take over for Santiago if BYU were to move on? There's so much happening out there. And it is concerning because 2 weeks ago I said this is all smoke. Kalani's just trying to make sure he gets what he was promised, right? Like, no more Mr. Nice Guy. And now I'm starting to think, I hope this doesn't bleed over and impact, what the Cougars are doing. Because if you think about the success, and they've had great success over the past 2 years that BYU has had, a lot of it comes because they are so in sync. Because, look, man, when you are a team that plays together and plays for a cause greater than, and everyone is on the same page and there's no drama in the locker room or around the program, the ball bounces your way. That's just how it works in football and in life, right? If you're doing the next right thing. So if that gets a little clumsy inside the program, it is kind of concerning now. It's just something I'm keeping an eye on, because you don't want to see that. We're 2 weeks now from September 5th, BYU's opener against Utah Tech. I don't think you'd see it, against Utah Tech, but next week you play Arizona, and it's like, okay. So I would think that over the next few weeks, everything will kind of be cleared up. Or I would hope, because BYU has a heck of a football team.
Morgan Scalley taking over at Utah. There's a temptation to think everything's going to go along just as it was. There's the thought that, hey, there's always some kind of learning curve. Until you've been a head coach, you can't really have that experience. I'm looking at the roster wondering if there's as many difference makers as they're used to having. They'll be solid, but big-time players making big plays in big games. I wonder if they're a little short on that. What do you think?
Well, I think they have explosive guys. Like, you bring back Devin Dampier, you still have Bird Ficklin, even a guy like Nate Johnson, who's like literally listed as athlete now. They can play him anywhere. And then, Wayshawn Parker is trying to get 1,000 yards this year. Daniel Bray behind him. I think they have the playmakers, right? Like, looking at this team getting ready for this first game, like, I think there's a ton of excitement. Here's where I actually worry a little bit about Utah is that Kevin McKibben, their new offensive coordinator, they're talking about, hey, we're going to add more wrinkles. Last year, I love our guy, Steve Bartle, right? Bartle had the best stat. I think I was listening to you guys where he said it's like 60, it was like 60-40 last year, running, passing for Utah. And now it'll probably be 50-50. I don't know that I love that. I mean, I know it's a different approach, and Utah won 11 games last year. Like Kyle Whittingham's recipe worked. I understand that you got changes along the offensive line, but as Morgan Scalley says, that happens every year. you lose studs, you have to replace them. That's opportunities for other guys, and Utah certainly has the horses up front that can, maybe you're not going to have 2 first-round picks, but you're still going to be strong up front. I'll be really interested to see when we get into the thick of the Big 12 slate for Utah, are they able to just run teams and knock them off the ball and win the way that Kyle Whittingham liked to win, or is, taking a more sexy approach to the offensive attack? Could that hurt this team? Right? I'm interested to see that because clearly, I think Morgan Scalley is going to do very well. And I think the fact that he has been coaching waiting for a while, he's more than prepared. And I just love his energy and his roots to Utah. And it seems like everybody around there is totally enamored with him being the head coach now. But the change in philosophy on offense worries me a little bit.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
I mean, he's a legend. You know what I mean? Kyle's a complete legend. I was looking for, it's been 2 decades since somebody else has been a head coach at Utah. I understand Morgan Scalley's ready for the challenge, but Kyle was very special.
Can there be sleeper teams this year? And if so, who?
Yes, I definitely think there can be. I always look back to 2 years ago, and you guys, this hits close to home for you, or 2-3 years ago. We began the season with Cam Rising in Utah and Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State, right? They were everybody was talking about those 2 teams. They're number 1 and number 2 in the Big 12. And it was opposite day for the entire year. Those 2 teams were near the bottom. A lot of it had to do with injuries. But I think you got to keep an eye on Oklahoma State. I'm starting to believe that hype a little bit because Eric Morris has shown he can win at every level. And every year we have a guy a young coach, right, who splashes onto the scene with a hot quarterback. And, they did that sort of last year. Mestamaker did with Eric Morris at North Texas. But now if you do it in the Big 12, the whole country's going to be watching. Yeah. And I think Houston also. I think Willie Fritz is beyond special as a head coach. And what they did last year, again, that was a 10-3 season that kind of ho-hum, a little bit like Utah's. So I don't think you can count Houston out because Connor Wegman, there's a reason he was the best quarterback in the country going into Texas A&M, and he's starting to remind us of that. So those are 2 sleepers who I'm keeping an eye on.
Do we always have to watch these Texas teams, and maybe it changes, but I just wonder with TCU and Baylor, and they're not all going to be up at the same time, but there's just so much talent there. So if they have a decent amount of money, could any one of them catch lightning in a bottle?
I love Baylor. I spent a lot of time in Central Texas, and I'm close to a lot of people around the program. But and certainly I think it could be a situation for Baylor where you talk about the athleticism. I think DJ Lagway could be a lot of fun to watch, and I think their ceiling is 7-8 wins. So I don't know that you have to really worry about Baylor. I think TCU could be interesting because it just seems like every couple of years, they have been steadily very good. And Sonny Dykes seems to be in love with Jaden Craig, their new quarterback from Harvard. And Sonny Dykes just says, look, he just wins. So, again, you talk about the ball bouncing your way. If the ball bounced their way a couple times last year, that's a team that, would have had a run at the college football playoff. So I think TCU this year, more so than Baylor, is someone to keep an eye on.
The goal here is to get multiple teams into the playoff. We all understand that, and that hasn't happened yet. How much do you think that will be determined upon the success of the big non-conference games that a few of these teams have?
I think it will determine a lot. I think that the one that, we all have circled is BYU and Notre Dame. And that is going to be, right now, that's the game I'm most excited for in the college football season, period. Because if BYU, this is it. You have a home game against the perennial power, and Notre Dame's going to be really good this year. A lot of times in the past, even last year, BYU on the road at Texas Tech, right, in that game on Saturday afternoon, and then Big 12 championship in Texas. You finally have this game being played at home in Provo. And I heard my ESPN brother and BYU legend, Trevor Maddich, made a great point. He said, this could be, and I remember as a kid watching that game when Ty Detmer and the Cougars beat Miami on national television to open the season. And it was just whoa. You know, it's like they grabbed everybody by the lapels early that year and said, "We are here. We're the real deal." And of course, Ty Detmer goes on to win the Heisman Trophy. And that game was played in Provo. Like, that's an opportunity, the game at Notre Dame for BYU, to give the Big 12 two teams in the college football playoff. And really, you don't necessarily have to win that game if you can hold serve throughout the rest of your schedule. You need to keep it close, and obviously you would want to win it. But even if you lose it, if it's like a 3-point game, you still remain in the conversation. If again you hold serve when you're supposed to everywhere else, which is a huge if, as we know, once the ball gets kicked off.
Other top 10 opponents out there: Oklahoma State's going to host Oregon. Arizona State has to go to Texas A&M. There's probably another tier of games: Iowa State, Missouri, Kansas. How many of those can they win, and how much can they move the needle here? Because it feels like the dream could be dead real quick.
Well, look, I think that the good news is the game, nobody's expecting Oklahoma State to beat Oregon, even though that game's going to be at Oklahoma State, and I think that's going to be an amazing environment because Oklahoma State should win Week 1 against Tulsa, and then that is an amazing fan base. They got a ton of resources there. That place, they're bloodthirsty, that program. So that environment in itself should be awesome. The scary ones, if I'm literally handicapping it with you and I'm being maybe a little negative, saying the dream could be dead already, and my heart's breaking over here, I would say that Utah-Arkansas is one that's kind of scary, right? Because Arkansas is they're Arkansas. They stunk last year, but, I mean, they've got SEC athletes, and they come on the road. They're upset that that's a night game. There's all kinds of, there's a chip on your shoulder, nobody believes in us attitude that you really don't want an SEC opponent coming into your stadium with. So they've got to win games like that, right? They cannot lose games like that. And you mentioned, Kansas needs to beat Missouri, right? They almost beat them last year. They need to beat Missouri. I don't expect Arizona State to win Texas A&M, but you just got to win the games you're supposed to win, and then you get a big one like BYU over Notre Dame, and then we're talking. But I am with you in a sense where, you sort of have to prove to me that you can do it before I'm oh, they're going to do it. So I would like to see the Big 12 show me that they can get two teams in this college football playoff, right?
Well, we'd all like to see them show that, and then we'd like one of them to be one of our teams. And both would be great, but that seems pretty greedy, and Texas Tech seems to be lined up pretty well. So we'll see how it plays out. Pete, as always, we love having you come on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Guys, you do an amazing job. Getting ready for these two games, I've been listening to a lot of you guys, and it's a total delight. So I look forward to the next time, and I appreciate you having me on.
Pete Sousa, Inside the Big 12 and the Pete Sousa Show.